On the southern edge of Cleveland, where the wind off Lake Erie bites at your collar even in September, there sat a mid-sized warehouse called Merrick Industrial Supply. It wasn't a glamorous place, just rows of steel shelving, humming forklifts, and the constant smell of machine oil and cardboard, but for the people who worked there, it was steady, honest work. Kyle Marsh had worked the floor of Merrick for 11 years. He was 43, broad-shouldered, and quiet in the way that only people who are truly comfortable with themselves can be. Every morning he arrived 7 minutes early, brewed a pot of coffee in the break room for whoever wanted it, and tied on his safety apron without being asked twice. Kyle's job was complex, more complex than it looked from the outside. He managed the receiving dock, cross-checked incoming shipments against purchase orders, flagged discrepancies before they became expensive mistakes, and quietly trained every new hire who came through the back door. He also knew, by memory, where nearly every item in the building was stored. But Kyle was not fast. He moved with deliberate, unhurried care because he had learned, the hard way, that rushing in a warehouse was how boxes got lost, orders got misfiled, and expensive equipment got shipped to the wrong address in another state. His pace wasn't laziness. It was precision built into his bones over a decade of getting things right. Then Devin Cho arrived. Devin was 28, fresh from a regional management training program, and full of the kind of confidence that comes from reading about efficiency without ever having lived it. He wore press slacks on the warehouse floor, carried a tablet everywhere, and used words like throughput and velocity metrics in casual conversation. Within his first 2 weeks, Devin had timed every worker on the floor with a stopwatch app on his phone. He color-coded a spreadsheet. Green meant fast. Yellow meant acceptable. Red meant a problem. Kyle's name sat at the bottom of the list, glowing red, and Devin circled it with his stylus every morning like it was the one thing standing between him and a promotion. What Devin's spreadsheet did not capture was what Kyle actually did during those extra minutes. It didn't note that Kyle had caught a duplicate invoice last Tuesday worth $8,000. It didn't record that Kyle had reorganized the cold storage section in a way that shaved 12 minutes off every pharmaceutical order. Numbers on a screen are only as wise as the person reading them. One gray Thursday afternoon, Devin called Kyle into the small glass-walled office near the loading bay. Kyle sat across the desk, his big hands resting on his knees, and listened as Devin explained, with charts, with polite corporate language, with a voice that never quite met his eyes, that his performance metrics were not aligning with departmental targets. Kyle was being let go. Kyle didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice or slam a door. He asked if he could finish the week to help with the transition. Devin said no, that wouldn't be necessary. Kyle nodded slowly, stood up, shook Devin's hand, and walked out to his locker. He packed his thermos, his worn safety apron, and a small photo of his daughter taped to the inside door. Then he walked out into the cold Cleveland air. Devin had already arranged a replacement, a temp worker named Marcus, who came highly recommended by the staffing agency for his speed. Marcus could process twice as many packages per hour as Kyle. Devin told his supervisor back at regional headquarters that the change would be immediately impactful. He used that exact phrase. He was proud of it. Marcus started on a Monday. By 10 o'clock that morning, the first problem emerged. A shipment of medical equipment had arrived with a partial packing list, and nobody on the floor knew the protocol for flagging a partial receipt because Kyle had always handled it quietly, and nobody had thought to write it down. Marcus processed the boxes anyway, marked them as complete, and moved on. By noon, the day had begun to unravel in ways that were almost impressive in their speed. 3 pallets had been stacked in the wrong zone, blocking a fire exit. A refrigerated shipment had been signed in but never moved to cold storage, because Marcus didn't know where cold storage was. And the afternoon receiving log, which Kyle had always pre-sorted before lunch, sat untouched in a pile on the desk. Devin spent the afternoon running between the loading dock and his office, trying to put out fires he didn't fully understand. He called one of the senior floor workers, a woman named Patricia, and asked her to explain the receiving process. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, very calmly, Kyle had a system. We all just worked around it. Nobody ever bothered to learn it because we never had to. By 3 in the afternoon, a pharmaceutical distributor had called the main office twice, furious that their temperature-sensitive order had been sitting in an uncontrolled environment for 4 hours. Devon had no good answer. The order had to be re-inspected, partially repackaged, and a credit memo issued. The cost to the company that afternoon alone was more than Kyle's monthly salary. At 4:55, Marcus walked up to Devon, pulled off his badge, set it gently on the desk, and said, "I'm sorry, man. I'm good at moving boxes fast. Whatever this job actually is, I'm not the right person for it." He picked up his jacket, said goodbye to no one in particular, and walked out the same door Kyle had walked out of just 4 days before. Devon sat alone in his glass office as the warehouse fell quiet around him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Outside, a cold rain had started to fall on Cleveland, drumming softly on the metal roof. He opened his laptop and stared at his spreadsheet, all those colors, all those numbers, and for the first time, he understood that he had been measuring the wrong things entirely. The next morning, Devon drove to the diner on Lorraine Avenue where Patricia had told him Kyle sometimes had breakfast. He found Kyle at a corner booth, reading the paper over a cup of coffee, completely unhurried, just like always. Devon sat across from him and told him the truth, all of it, without the corporate language, without the charts, without any performance metrics at all. Just the truth. Kyle listened until Devon was finished. Then he folded his newspaper, wrapped both hands around his coffee mug, and said, "I'll come back, but this time, we write everything down. Every process, every protocol, every system. So it never disappears when someone walks out the door again." Devon agreed. And for the first time since arriving in Cleveland, he realized that the slowest man in the building had been the one keeping everything moving all along.